In a world of ordinary fantasy football podcasts, ordinary guys rise up to bring you extraordinary analysis and entertainment. This is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts Kevin Cotillo, Sal Lito, and Stephen Marcus.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Today is Thursday, December 15th, and this is the FLAFFL House Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Cotillo, and I have with me Mr. Sal Lito. What's going on, Sal?
What's up, man? It feels very spacious around here tonight.
It's it's a little, well, you might say spacious. I feel empty. It's an emptiness.
Stay away from my friend, Steve. That's my friend.
Yeah, you're right. Steve is your friend. I apologize for no, I don't feel empty at all. I'm actually happy. It's better when there's only two of us because only one of you is there to disagree with me. So Steve's not with us tonight. Unfortunately, he has he had to play parent tonight, I guess.
Yeah, parenting is bullcrap.
Yeah, the whole adulting thing in general really not fun. But parenting can be difficult when you have other things to do. I think we tried to get the kid on, but he said that was a no-go. Apparently, the fees were too high for us to pay him.
I did believe that was just an excuse. I did hear a rumor that his son is a better fantasy football player than him.
Oh,
and Steve was worried about being outshined.
That makes so much more sense. So much more sense. So you do get the joy of listening to Sal and I bicker tonight. Just want to remind everyone before we get going that you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow me at Wally Central. You can follow Sal at Lito Sal. You can follow Steve at Sid Skeet. I'm guessing his 3-year-old son probably doesn't have a Twitter, but soon enough you'll be able to follow him. You can follow the show at FLAFFL House, and you can check us out online at flafflhouse.com. We have some pretty good rankings system that we just updated, so that thing's pretty cool. You can now sort, Sal. You can now sort by your favorite one of the three of us.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, and I guess we should point out that was from the help of our good friend Scott Fish. And I would just like to say once again, we've said this before, this guy is super busy. He gives so much of his time. And he literally took it upon himself to reach out to us when he saw that he felt we were using a bit of an antiquated method of posting our rankings.
He didn't like my spreadsheets.
No, and he completely designed the system for us and helped us to embed it in our site. And so shout out to Scott, great guy, did great things this year. Check him out on Twitter. I believe it's ScottFish24. Correct. And see all the good things he did at Toys for Tots this year. He posted all the pictures and. Just a good dude all around. So thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Scott. We definitely appreciate it. And definitely check out, if you're also on the Twitter, check out at Bull Rush Podcast. The Bull Rush Podcast is awesome. They do a lot of Dynasty focus, but they just generally have a good time when they're on there. It's always a good show. So a little less frequent than ours, which I hate. I wish they did more shows, but I get it. They're all busy guys. So thanks again, Scott. We appreciate that. And, tonight we get some games to get through. This is going to be a big week in fantasy, Sal.
Yeah, I wouldn't know a lot about it. I'm not playing in too many fantasy playoff matchups this week, but I'm here for your help. I do have one in the Friday Feed the Disease League.
The one league that I think all season you've been like, I don't even care about that league. It was thrown together.
Yeah, we did kind of throw it together essentially on a Friday when people had nothing to do and we were hanging around the app and people want the draft. And so we threw it together and we were feeding our disease. So that became the name of the league. And I ended up with tied for the best record. So
it's actually a fun league. I like the setup there. It's a deep league with the extra roster spot or at least the extra starting position and then a really deep bench. So there's a lot of definitely challenging, definitely some good scoring. So it's a fun league.
I had a full point PPR and bonuses for long plays and 100-yard games. We threw a lot of different ways to score points in there. The only thing I stayed away from, which I have a guy, Vinny, if you're listening to this, a guy at work who I talk to, he's in one of these leagues where the scores on a weekly basis are like the 500s. I don't know. I don't get that one. Doesn't work for me. They get like points for every attempt, and I think if the guy blows his nose on the sideline, that's 2 points. It's the point system is crazy. So,
that's a lot. I don't want to see that much scoring. That's too much.
Yeah, it's a bit much, but they like it. It's the way they've come accustomed to play. And hey, listen, as long as you're out there playing, you got a good group of friends, a good group of guys, co-workers, or whatever the scoring system is. We could all discuss it here. It's what brings us all together. So whatever.
Definitely all that matters. And as we always say, as long as you know and understand your rules going in, it really doesn't matter what the rules are, right? So what I did want to ask you though, no cousin Donald leagues, huh? You didn't forge ahead?
I did not forge ahead. So I had I actually got in on the 5th seed. I was the 5 seed at 6 teams. There is and 2 teams do get a bye. In that league, I had Melvin Gordon and Dante Moncrief in my lineup.
Oh, yeah.
So that's basically two zeros right there. But I did have a shot going into Monday night because I was going against Tom Brady. And as I always point out, that is a category league. So you could still win with guys who put zeros up, because if you get another big game out of another guy in that roster position, like running back, so to speak, rushing yards is a category. So another guy could carry you, and there is bonuses and stuff like that. But Tom Brady's 400 yards and 2 to 3 touchdowns. What did he throw? 2 or 3? You were there.
3
were you sober?
Yeah.
3 touchdowns. That did me in.
Right, 3 touchdowns. I don't know. Yeah, 400 yards. So
if he could have just thrown one more of those touchdowns to Malcolm Mitchell, then I'd still be in FLAFFL. But I got the double whammy that night. I got just not enough from him and enough to beat me in the other league. So
yeah, that's definitely a bad combination there. I was looking at it today. He's got 22 touchdowns on the season already, minus the 4 games. I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, Tom Brady is great. He's phenomenal. If you're out there and you hate him, there's one reason why you hate him, because he typically beats your team.
That's right. This is right.
If you're an outsider looking in, that's the only reason you can hate him. I'm a Michigan fan when it comes to college, so I did root for him back in the day. I never thought he would turn into what he is. He really is in a discussion for best quarterback of all time. You can't deny that.
I always say that, but then I'm always called a homer. I mean, I think you have to put him in there at this point. And if he wins another Super Bowl, I don't know how you keep him out of that.
Well, the rest of us that's the only way we can get back at the Patriot fans, is to call them homers.
It's true.
We don't have a whole lot else to go on. Unless you're
right?
The only fans out there are New York Giant fans that can constantly keep going back to the fact that they beat them in 2 Super Bowls.
I know. Damn you, Jay.
Yeah, outside of that, the rest of us are just like, yeah, it was a fumble, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen. I would love to see a rematch of the Snowball, the Tuck Rule game, whatever you want to call it. So, but for now, we got a lot to get to today. A lot of games this weekend. People are in their second week of the playoffs for most, so we got to get them help, get them ready, get them primed. There is a game going on right now. The Seattle Seahawks are taking on the LA Rams, and it is a barn burner already, 0-0. We are moving into the second quarter there, so hopefully you're not dependent on some fantasy points from that game, and hopefully we can help you out with the rest of them. So let's forge ahead, Sal.
Let's forge.
All right, we'll start off with the Packers. Green Bay Packers taking on the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field Sunday at 1:00. This is a game. This is a game. There are 2 teams that actually play pretty well against each other, no matter what. I know the Bears are 3-10, but I think their record is not indicative of the team that they are, in my mind. I think that they play great defense. I shouldn't say great defense. They play very good defense. And they're competitive in most games, and I think they'll be competitive in this game. It's supposed to be freezing cold in Chicago, as it is just about most of the country this week. And it looks like it's going to be 6 degrees or so. And I gotta ask you, Sal. So with Aaron Rodgers, nicked up, having a calf injury, and the freezing cold that they're going to have to deal with. Are you concerned about Aaron Rodgers at all?
Yeah, I actually have him ranked as my number one quarterback this week. I think
so I guess not.
He's been playing through it, and he's been successful. And I think over the last few weeks, especially since he said we're going to run the table and win this division, he's done everything that he can to do that. And they've been winning games, and they've been winning it on the strength of his arm because their running game is virtually non-existent at this point. So, yeah, I'm not concerned. I believe Aaron Rodgers comes out and puts up a really solid effort. If you have him, you're playing him. I don't think that's even remotely a doubt. I think the question does lie with what do you do with his wide receivers at this point. Jordy Nelson, to me, is a play every week. I believe I have him at my number 4. Devontae Adams is probably just – I don't know if I have him just outside of my wide receiver 2 rankings or not, but I would have him in there. Randall Cobb is a guy I've started to lose a little bit of faith in. He just doesn't seem to be what he has been in the past, and that started really last year. Not as somebody I feel you can trust at this point. But so the name that I'm getting a lot of questions about this week, and it's a guy I think that we thought was starting to fade away, was Ty Montgomery. And Montgomery has started to get more use again in the running game. McCarthy has come out this week and said that he can handle 20-plus carries a game. And James Stark was in a car accident this week and is in concussion protocol as a result. So I think that you're not going to see Starks. And I think that Montgomery is going to be the guy. And it'll probably be more of those passes out of the backfield like we saw when he first started playing back there. So I think that also bodes well for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I can see that. I certainly can't argue with that logic. The Chicago Bears, I'm just looking it up, 9th best against fantasy quarterbacks this year so far. Giving up 19.6 points per game. I think that's pretty good for a defense that doesn't get a lot of credit. So definitely doing well. A little bit even better when you're talking about the last 5 weeks or so. Only giving up 18.7 points per game. So they're pretty good against quarterbacks, but I agree with you. I think that they're going to do, that I have Aaron Rodgers, I think, as my number 2 quarterback. You have him at 1. Steve's the lowest on him at 6. But so I'm with you. I think he's going to play through it. I think he's going to be okay. I think the cold does hurt him a little bit. And I don't know that I just don't know that I can trust Ty Montgomery like you're saying. I mean, I think that he'll be involved. I think that he's going to be the passing down back, and I think you're right. They'll probably throw it out of the backfield a little bit more than normal, just because of the weather and because they don't really have a stable running back. But I also just don't know that I trust Ty Montgomery to have the production that he had last week, and I don't know. I think Christine Michael's going to be used more in this game. I really do. I don't know. Something about it tells me that they're going to let him run the ball a little bit.
I don't disagree with that. I have Christine Michael ranked higher in my rankings. When I did my rankings last night, the way we have it set up, we still list Montgomery as a wide receiver. I don't think we actually have him in our running back rankings. So to me, if I was going into this game from a running back standpoint, especially in a standard league, it would be Christine Michael for me. I have Christine Michael at 34 for running backs this week. So I actually have him even 9 spots higher than you do. I have Starks still in there. Actually, I have Starks at 40, but that was before I knew how serious the concussion was. So he would probably drop out of our top 50 as a result of that right now. I don't think Starks is the guy I'm even considering playing this week. But Montgomery, to me, Kev, is, if it's a FLAFFL style 16-team league, maybe in a flex, he's not a guy I'm trusting as an RB2 by any stretch. But he's a guy I would consider in a flex because he could just get in a PPR league so many receptions out of the backfield. And we saw it in the first couple of games when he took over. It worked. I'm not sure why they went away from it, but we'll have to see. Hopefully you have better options. You're not going to make that choice.
Yeah, I completely agree there. So on the Chicago side of the ball, the big story is obviously Alshon Jeffrey returning. Matt Barkley's been pretty serviceable as far as a quarterback, considering it's Matt Barkley. But do you think, what are you doing with Alshon this week? I personally a lot of questions about him on the app. He's getting thrown into the mix up with a lot of who do I start questions for me, and I'm high on him. I think he comes back with a vengeance. I really do. For one, because I don't think anyone's really stepped up while he's been gone. I think that they're going to be throwing the ball to keep up with the Packers anyway, and he's got a lot to prove in the last couple of weeks. I think he has to, because he's a pending free agent at the end of the season unless they franchise him again, which theoretically they could. They'll have a lot of cap space to do that, and not a lot of guys to sign, in my opinion. So I think they could do that, but I think he's got a lot to prove in these last few weeks. So I expect him to come out and play hard.
Yeah, you definitely have him high. You have him in your top 5 for wide receivers this week. I have him just outside of wide receiver 2 territory myself. I don't think that he's not capable of coming back and doing it, but you could stay in shape, while you're not playing, but are you really in football shape? There is a difference. So for 4 weeks, he hasn't been on an actual football field playing with the team or practicing with the team. So for me, it's a situation where if I don't have a really solid wide receiver 2, I'm probably playing him as my wide receiver 2. So he's getting in there for me, and at worst, he's going to be in my flex. I think I want to see it for a week, and I realize it's late in the season and it's week 15, and you might not have a week next week if you don't get the win this week. But I'll probably have more confidence after I see him come out and play. He didn't play great earlier in the season, and I do agree. When are you going to show what you need to show? I thought I had heard something where Chicago agreed not to franchise him again. Was that at the beginning of the season when they franchise tagged him the one time, they agreed that they wouldn't do it a second time?
I don't remember that. I read an article recently about teams that were going to have some cap space coming up and things like that. So actually, it was an article based on like potential coaching changes and the top 10 coaching openings coming up. Chicago was on that list, and as a potential if they do fire John Fox, and it was that's one of the things that they were talking about was the cap space, and they did say that they could franchise him again. So maybe the article was wrong. It's entirely possible. I don't know.
And I also might be thinking of another guy who was franchised, that because at the beginning of the season there's that list of guys who are on the franchise list and are all lumped together, and none of them are ever too thrilled.
Yeah.
I think maybe Kirk Cousins might have been, he wasn't thrilled he didn't get the long term, but look at the money he got for 1 year. So he's probably very happy, but we'll have to wait and see. I think I might have been on Mike and Mike recently. They were going through all the coaches, head coaches, and surprisingly to me, there wasn't a lot of guys that it sounded like would get fired this year. I mean, Jeff Fisher, as we all know, got let go this week, and I think that Todd Bowles in New York is in danger, and Rex Ryan is in danger, and possibly even what's his name over in Cincinnati? His name, I'm drawing a blank on his name, the coach. They're all in danger, but I heard that John Fox is not, that they're looking to maybe go in a different direction with a different quarterback and give him another shot. So anything could happen. Strange things happen in the NFL all the time. Like Michael Floyd getting picked up by the Pats. But we'll get to that when you get to the Patriots game.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of now who else was on the list as far as guys that could get fired. They talked about what's his name in Indianapolis was on the list.
We're solid with the coaches' names.
Yeah, we're doing great with coach names right now. So we're just gonna move on. One guy, the last guy on this game, and we gotta move on soon. But
if Steve was here, he'd be just absolutely. We'd be getting texts in the background about how terrible we are.
Yeah, our time manager.
You're not na Steve.
I have Jordan Howard a little lower in this game at 15. You guys have them both in the top 10. I guess. For me, Green Bay, I know they struggled recently more against the run. It seems to me like the last couple of weeks they've been a little bit better, but they're and for the season they're still one of the top defenses against running backs. Do you just not concerned about that, or you just think so much goes through Howard that he's a top 10 guy every week no matter what?
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel. So when I feel that way about a guy, if I have him lower in that top 10, so I have him at 9, that means, okay, I do believe it's a tough matchup, But to me, he's earned enough respect from me that he gets enough touches. And I've said this before, the guy breaks big plays, whether it be running or catching the ball out of the backfield. He picks up chunks and usually ends up with a pretty balanced day. So I believe he'll get off. I don't think he'll have a huge 20-point game, but I think he's definitely always an option to get you 15. So that's just, he's owning him this year. I had the pleasure of enjoying that on a weekly basis. So
yeah, he's a talented back. I'm curious to see what will happen with him going forward, or excited, I guess I should say, to see what's going to happen with him next year. Hopefully they get a quarterback to help them out. I just realized that we screwed up already, Sal, and then another thing that Steve would be crushing us for. Saturday. There's a game on Saturday. It went right to Sunday, but
look at the game that's on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really much of a game, and I don't know how much fantasy impact there is at this point. Because but it is Miami playing New York at 8:30 on Saturday night. It's in New York. Again, I expect it to be very cold, but you would know that, or in New Jersey, I should say. I don't know if New Yorkers get pissed off about that.
I think the ones who are fans of those teams, they get a little upset. The Jersey people get upset that they're called New York. The New York people get upset that they got to drive to Jersey.
Yeah.
And then they all just get to the stadium together and drink and curse. And
I'll tell you what pisses me off is when they show pictures of New York City.
Right.
Like
which is nowhere really. It's really nowhere near where the game is.
Yeah, it's the same thing
at all.
Same thing out here with when they show pictures of Boston. We're in Foxborough. We're 25, 30 miles away. Like,
yeah,
come on.
It's across a river in New York. It's not even.
Yeah.
There's a big body of water between where the game is and the actual city. But yeah, they do that all the time.
All right, so the big news in this one, if you can call it big news, Miami quarterback Ryan Tannehill is out, or most likely out, I should say. They haven't really officially announced that he's out. He did not tear his ACL as originally thought. He did sprain his ACL and his MCL, I believe. So he's got some injuries that he's going to be out a couple weeks at least, in my opinion. So he's not in this game.
Tannehill can't even get hurt right.
Yeah, I know, right? But Matt Moore is actually a serviceable backup when you think about who the starting quarterback is. I don't know that I think Matt Moore is much of a downgrade. So if you've got guys for Miami in your lineup, I think you're going to be okay here. I still think I'm not ranking these guys high, but Landry, Parker, and even Kenny Stills are probably not losing much value, right?
Yeah, I have Jarvis Landry at 17. We all have about the same area, 18, 15, and 17. So we have him as a wide receiver too. I think they're going to be throwing a ball because the Jets stop the run and they don't stop the pass. So this is a game where you'll expect them to be trying to move the ball in the air. And they're still in playoff contention. So Matt Moore was a guy who they actually started for a while a few years back. And it was the guy that they thought would be their quarterback. So I expect them to go out. The Jets are bad, so.
Yeah, and they've checked out. I mean, they really have. It seems like they've definitely checked out. Defensively, they were good against the run, as you mentioned, but I don't think that they played well last week, and that was against a terrible team. They let Carlos Hyde run all over them. So I don't know. I just don't see much out of the defense here. So I would start all of your Dolphins. I mean, I think you have to temper expectations a little bit because they're still the Dolphins. But I have Ajayi ranked 11th. I think it's the highest I've ranked any running back against the Jets this year, and that's really just because I don't think they're playing anymore. I don't think they're playing for anything. So I think their coach probably will get fired, and I think they got a lot of work to do in the offseason.
A lot of talk around here is that he's going to make it. He's going to stay.
Really?
People are not happy about it, but
he's I don't think he's a bad coach. I think he's got dealt with a terrible roster at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Kevin. I'm not sure that he's another guy who they brought in who's a good defensive guy who I'm not sure is cut out to be the lead guy to be in charge. I think the Jets need to bring in an offensive guy right now because that's where they need the most work. They need to bring in somebody to work with a young quarterback. They need to get a young quarterback. They got guys here. I just don't think are the solution.
Yeah.
So, word is around here Bowles is going to survive. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. From the New York side of the ball, for a fantasy perspective, you had the post in the chat the other day about Brandon Marshall's injuries. Apparently everything.
Yeah, it was listed. His injuries on Roto World were listed as everything. So I'm not sure that that's a good sign.
It's definitely not a good sign. I don't know if he's going to play. And even if he plays, I don't know that it's, with Bryce Petty at quarterback, I just don't know what you're going to see out of here. Miami's defense has actually been playing pretty well, but I guess the one person that I really want to know about on the Jets side of the ball, Sal, is Bilal Powell. What are you doing with him? If Forte's out, is he a must start?
I think he is. We all have him ranked pretty decently high. I believe I have him as an RB2 this week. I had
him at 20, yeah.
You have him at 19, and Steve and I each have him at 18. So I'm sure that's the highest that we've had him ranked this year, and that's a clear-cut RB2.
Yep. And
yeah, he got some good work last week, and he looked good. And like we say, he makes good money. So why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he want to work for it? That was a joke, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this though. Look, he's not going to do what he did last week. So I mean, he's not playing the 49ers again. The Dolphins can be run on, but they're not the 49ers. So let's just be careful with what you're thinking there. So all right, let's move along. Because Steve is getting increasingly angry listening to this. So the Jacksonville Jaguars will play at Houston against the Texans, and I gotta say this game, interestingly enough, has playoff implications because Houston's still relevant. They're still in and involved. But I mean, we've talked so much about Brock Osweiler or Asswasher, however you want to refer to him. We prefer Asswasher on this podcast, and how he's killing their the fantasy value of everyone on the team. But like I said, they keep doing enough to stay in games and win games and stay relevant in this playoff race. So they're still fighting for something. But I don't know. Can you trust anyone on this team, Sal?
Yeah, it's become a situation where it's brought down even Lamar Miller, right? So Lamar Miller is the only guy in his team I'm starting, right? DeAndre Hopkins. You don't want to drop the guy. I had people come to me this week and ask me flat out, should they drop him or tell me they were going to drop him? And my response was, don't drop him, because the worst thing that could happen is you drop this guy after 14 weeks and think you're proving a point. Then somebody says, I'm going to pick this guy up. They saw him against you, and he has that 2-touchdown game that you were waiting for all year, and it basically eliminates you for the playoffs. So he goes to the edge of my bench, and at the end of the year, I take a picture of him, I burn it outside in the chimney, and I move on with my life, and I get that bad juju away from me.
Absolutely. I have him ranked 34th this week, which is the lowest I've ever had him ranked. The tennis. I'm sorry. Jeez. Wow. This is huge. This is just bad. The Jacksonville Jaguars are actually a really good team against opposing fantasy wide receivers. The best in the league. In fact, they're only giving up 12.7 points per game. Over the last 5 weeks. So I think you have to temper your expectations for a wide receiver playing them anyway. And then on top of the fact that you factor in the fact that DeAndre Hopkins has just been terrible. So he's not startable for me this week either. And I think you got to look elsewhere. I'm with you. Lamar Miller is the guy that you're starting on this team. That's about it. CJ Fedorowicz, or CJ Fancy Hat, as he's referred to in FLAFFL, it looks like he's going to miss the game. He's in the concussion protocol. So it might have a slight uptick for a guy like Ryan Griffin. But even that, he's going to be just outside startable as well. And for a playoff, I don't think anyone can really start him comfortably unless we're depending on Fedorowicz. So
this is your favorite tight end defense in the league. How are you starting the guy? You got to forget it. Just bench all them tight ends. I don't care who they bring out.
Exactly. So what about Jacksonville? Are we trusting the Bortles no interceptions for last week and rolling them out there against a great Houston defense?
Nah, I'm pretty sure we all have Bortles down in the 20s.
Yeah.
He's a low end QB too. So if you're in a 2 QB league, you're probably rolling him out. But this is the battle of the disappointing wide receivers game this year, right? Allen Robinson is the other guy that was a first round wide receiver that really crapped the bed on all his owners this year. So they're both guys I'm not interested in playing this week, and I don't want to hear nothing about TJ Yeldon. I don't want to hear if Ivory plays. There's just no goodness on his team at all. There's legitimately nothing at all that I would want to do. Maybe I stream their defense. That's about it this week.
Yeah, I could see streaming either of the defenses. If you've made it this far, you've made it to despite the guys that have been on these teams that are on your roster. So I would stay away from them if you can and look elsewhere. So let's move along and talk about a game that does have some fantasy relevance. Cleveland at Buffalo.
Oh, did you say that with a straight face?
I tried really hard. Yeah, the Browns will be in Buffalo. Look, there is fantasy relevance there. I mean, on
the Buffalo side.
On the Buffalo side of the ball, you're looking at LaShawn McCoy. You're looking at Sammy Watkins. Charles Clay had a decent game. He might be a guy you're trotting out there if you stream tight ends. Tyrod Taylor, to me, this is a great matchup. And I guess I want to get your opinion there. We'll start there, Sal. You guys were lower on him than I was. I had him. I think I had him in the top 5 originally when I did my rankings. And then I had to sort of dial it back a little bit. I think I ended up in 11 for him, but you guys are a little lower there. So what's the reasoning behind that? Do you just think he doesn't have it? I mean, it's Cleveland. It's a cake matchup.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's that I've relied on Tyrod Taylor, especially in DraftKings. I don't own him in any league, so really in DraftKings. In other really matchups that just gleamed and glistened to me, like they should be unbelievably good matchups, and he didn't come through. So maybe I'm a little jaded off of that. He should go out and put up numbers in this game. I do have him at 16, so I don't have him as a QB1. But it wouldn't be strange to me if you didn't trust, like, say you didn't trust Russell Wilson tonight because he's just been so pitiful lately. You didn't want to trust him even against the bad Rams team and on a Thursday night. Maybe you wanted to go with a guy like Tyrod Taylor. I could understand it. If you have Jameis Winston, if Eli Manning hasn't been, coming through for you and you put out a 5-point effort and got you eliminated from FLAFFL, nothing personal, last week, maybe you want to start him over a guy like that. So I could understand where any one of the guys that I have ranked from 11th down to 16 where he is, if you want to play him over those guys, I get it. But just based on some earlier in the season performances, that's why I have him where he is. But I do agree with you on Watkins. All three of us ranked him at 14. We all had him in the exact same spot. And I think that he got the touchdown last week, got off the schneid, and maybe that breaks the dam a little bit for a guy like him. I think he gets behind the defense in this game and breaks at least one big one. And I'm going to be watching to see if that happens because I have him in a few places this week. Nothing important because I'm out of most things, but I have him in places.
At least you have him. That'll be nice. Maybe they're keeper leagues at least?
No.
Oh,
no.
All right. The Cleveland Browns have given up 30 passing touchdowns this year. So, to me, that, for a guy that doesn't throw passing touchdowns, I think if he's going to throw passing touchdowns, this is the week that he will do it. So, I'm pretty high on Tyrod Taylor. I think you can definitely start him. Look, I don't think you're going to start him over a guy like Drew Brees or even Andrew Luck. I think I've seen some of those questions, and I'm not there yet, but Eli Manning and Jameis Winston and Phillip Rivers, these are guys that I think I would roll them out there ahead of, so at least for me. Anyway, let's continue on here as far as this game is concerned. Is there anyone on Cleveland that you're starting? I mean, are you putting any faith in Isaiah Crowell this week against the Buffalo defense or Terrell Pryor? Do you think he bounces back at all?
Yeah, Buffalo has not been good against the run lately. I don't know if you have those stats ahead in front of you, but I believe in the past 5 weeks they might even be they're one of the worst run defenses in the league. So I actually have
they are the worst, in fact, over the last 5 weeks, 27.1 fantasy points per game to running backs.
Yeah, so I have Crowell ranked the highest I've had him ranked in weeks, and that's at number 25 for me. So he's definitely a flex-worthy player for me this week. And again, that's ahead of some guys. Theo Riddick might not play, so that would bump him up. Theo Riddick would drop down. I know Mark Ingram, I believe, is dealing with some nagging stuff. And then if you don't trust a guy like Bilal Powell, who's a guy we talked about earlier, who we have ranked up around 19 and 18, I think that he's definitely a worthy RB2 this week. But definitely I'm getting him into the flex because those numbers that Kevin just read to you, it's evident that Buffalo lately is not stopping the run.
Yeah, he's definitely. I have him at 20, so he's definitely a guy that I think you got to get in there. We all ranked Terrell Pryor in the 30s, so we're treating him more of the wide receiver 3 potential flex range. So we're not really trusting him to get back off the snide too much, but it shouldn't be as bad as it was last week. So
well, it turns out he's a tremendous idiot.
Yeah, well,
when a good quality individual like Adam Pac-Man Jones doesn't like you, you know you're not a good person.
Yeah. All right, we got to move on. So Philadelphia will travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. The Eagles come into this game not looking good overall. I think they played a little bit better last week. Carson Wentz seemed like he made fewer mistakes last week than the previous couple of weeks. But this offense still seems to be struggling outside of Zach Ertz and maybe Jordan Matthews. I'm not sure you're looking toward any of these in a fantasy playoff matchup. Ryan Matthews looks like he might return this week, but can you trust him?
Well, Ryan Matthews actually played last week. I don't know if you...
I didn't notice that.
If he means that little to you, but he actually gained 60 yards last week, and with Smallwood getting injured and then Sproles getting freight trained on a punt return, he and Kenyon Barner was actually
there's no
inactive.
one there.
Yeah, he was inactive last week, so Matthews played, but I expect Barner to be active this week because it looks like Smallwood won't play and Sproles is up in the air. So, yeah, but this is the best run defense in the league, right? So This is Ryan Matthews. I don't know that he's really done nothing for you all season except for maybe get a touchdown in the first quarter of a couple of games and then get benched for some reason on a repeated basis. So not a guy I'm turning to when it's the most important weeks of the fantasy football season. So the spot that you mentioned was Jordan Matthews. So he's questionable as well, but I think he's going to play. And Baltimore has not been that great against wide receivers. I mean, I guess over the last 5 weeks, they've actually been middle of the road. They've been 14th in the league, 14th worst, I guess, in the league against defending wide receivers. So they've given up 6 touchdowns over 5 weeks. I think we have him as a wide receiver too, and that's because some other guys have some tough matchups this week. But yeah, if I'm looking at anybody, it's probably going to be him. Ertz has played well, but I don't think this is a great matchup for him. But he's a tight end 1. If you have him, there's probably a few other guys you have that you're going to trust more than him at this point. So you roll him out. But other than that, you're not starting Wentz.
Yeah, the Ravens actually come in 7th worst against tight ends, so it's not a terrible matchup. I think they played, better. They've played better against the tight end, over the last few weeks. But Bennett had an okay day last week against them, and they are coming in on a short week. But either way, I think you're right. I think it's Jordan Matthews. I think you're staying away from Ryan Matthews because you probably don't have to play him, because you went so long without playing him. So, and I think on that side of the ball, that's pretty much it. On the Baltimore side of the ball, you got your receivers. Steve Smith is probably rolling out there as either a wide receiver 2, 3, or a flex, somewhere in that range. I think that Kenneth Dixon is the guy that I'm asking you about, Sal, because obviously we talked about it on the last show. He had a good game against the New England Patriots. He was active. He was involved in a lot of the plays. He saw more snaps than Terrence West. He had a lot of, very active in the passing game, scored a touchdown. So are you trusting that going forward? Are you willing to use him as a flex or an RB2 even, or is he someone you're not really sold on?
No, listen, he looked every bit the part last week. So he definitely got my attention. And he's a guy who I agreed with you definitely at the beginning of the year. If you remember going way back, I said that if Kenneth Dixon got healthy, he could actually win NFL Rookie of the Year this year. Now, he didn't get healthy in enough time, but when he came back, he did take a little bit of a few weeks to really get the lead touches over Terrence West. So that's something that's out of the realm of possibility. You guys have him ranked right at the back end of RB2, and I have him at 27, which means I have him as a flex. So, yeah, if I have him, I'm plugging him in as a flex this week. It's the first time I've ranked him ahead of Terrence West all season, so I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. And
congratulations on that.
Thank you. I mean, the Ravens have officially fallen out of first place, which they were holding on to for a long time. So they're fighting. They're fighting for their lives, and they've turned to this kid. So
Does that make you happy? I know you were so down on the Ravens, and then they won a couple games and started to make you look bad. Are you excited that they're losing?
yeah, I don't have any dislike like you do for the Ravens. I don't like them. I don't dislike them. But they had gotten a few games above 500. I was like, damn it, they're making me look stupid. But they're coming back to earth. Good chance. I said there's a good possibility they finish below 500, and at 7-6, it is in play, baby.
It is in play. They actually don't have a great schedule coming up either, so it is certainly in play. All right, we will continue on. Oh, I saw a lot of questions about Flacco for some reason. Don't start Joe Flacco.
The Flack out of here.
Yeah, seriously, just don't start Joe Flacco. You have a better option, I guarantee it. Having said that, let's move along. The Tennessee Titans will travel to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium. Historically known as one of the toughest places to play in the league. So, Sal, are you downgrading your Titans in this one with a Kansas City Chiefs team that is on a roll, playing very well, and at home?
Well, I didn't downgrade Murray too much. I mean, he is at the back end of the RB10s for me. I have him at
RB10s.
He's not. Yeah, top. I meant to say top 10 RB10.
I don't think he's an RB10.
he's probably a notch above.
Yeah.
I have him at 6 actually. So we all have him pretty evenly. You have him at 6, Steve at 5, and myself at 6. But he's been a solid, number 3 overall RB all year. So I have him a tick down, but Kansas City hasn't defended the run great. I think that they've also, look at their stats actually in the recent weeks. They've been really bad against the passing game as well. So I think that you could move the ball on this team. Their defense just makes plays. Like they get turnovers and they return them to the house, or they block field goals and return them, or they take 2-point conversions against the Falcons and screw their season and screw the Raiders. And nothing personal. It's nothing personal.
No, not personal at all.
So, yeah, I think where the Chiefs defense really is dominant on a weekly basis is that they score points and they get sacks and they get turnovers. But you could also move the ball on them. So
yeah, last 3 weeks, 9th worst against running backs. So
yeah, I have the wide receivers down a little bit in this game, but I would be okay starting Mariota as a low-end QB1. And, of course, you're going to have Murray in there. I think that the Derrick Henry coming in and taking the touches thing might have been a little ahead of schedule. He got one goal line carry, and then they took him right back out and put Murray in, and Murray got the touchdown on the next play. So, yeah, it's Murray and it's Mariota, and then Delaney Walker. If you're desperate, you're going to look at some of the wide receivers. But even Rashard Matthews is not what he was a few weeks ago. So.
Yeah, Steve and I both have Rashard Matthews in the low 30s. You're way higher on him at 50, or lower on him, I guess I should say, at 51. So, he's definitely not an ideal matchup for you. I think he's worthy of a flex. I think he's been fairly consistent for the most part, so I think you can roll him out there. So on the Kansas City side of the ball, Sal, your boy for most of the season, Spencer Ware. What are you doing with Spencer Ware? Because look. He didn't have a great game last week, and a lot of people are downgrading him a little bit because the production's just kind of fallen off a little bit here, and Tennessee's not a great matchup to begin with. So what are you doing with you guys have him in your top 10? I have him at 17. You're at 7. Steve's at 9. So you're obviously comfortable with him.
Yeah, I had this somebody point out to me the other day that he's a touchdown dependent RB1, and I'm aware of that. But in the same way that Melvin Gordon was getting it done earlier in the year, I believe the opportunities will present itself, and the touchdowns will help carry him. And I think the Chiefs might also try to get up and run the clock in this game as well. So, I have him as a top 10 play. I think he's a RB1 this season. On the cusp of an RB1 this season, and I have him ranked there. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the Titans just a little bit tougher against the run than I would like to have him in as an RB1. So I have him at an RB2. That's the reason for the downgrade. They're 30th or third best in the league against running backs at giving up 15.1 points per game. So overall, I think that's why I downgrade him a little bit. Is there anyone else in Kansas City that you're really considering starting besides Travis Kelce and Spencer Ware?
Yeah, look at where the Titans are defending wide receivers.
Let me see here. Let me pull it up.
Pretty poor.
Yeah, but
like worse than the league poor.
So Tyreek Hill looks like he'd be a good start then. I think I actually have him in the top 24 as well.
I think I have him the highest I've ranked Tyreek Hill all year.
Yep, I have him at 17. You guys both have him at 23.
Yeah, so yeah, he's up there. He's a wide receiver too this week for sure. The guy's just got game breaking speed. I believe they made the point last week that he's the fastest player in the NFL right now.
And he's definitely not. I mean, Macklin's not clearly. People thought with Macklin coming back last week, there might be a threat to his touches or what he can do, but clearly it didn't affect him very much. So they're getting this guy involved quite a bit. So,
and you got the chance that he takes one to the house on a kick return. He's
absolutely
got the ball in his hands every which way possible. So he's a guy I've come to trust.
And Travis Kelce is a top 5 play at tight end every week, no matter who the defense is. So
the guy snaps off 100-yard games like they're chocolate bars, for Christ's sake. Don't mean nothing. No thing to him.
It's nothing. So let's move along. We'll get to the Detroit Lions playing the New York Giants in New York at MetLife Stadium. What's the weather like in New York this week?
It's freezing cold here right now. It was in the 20s today. It's going to be the 20s tomorrow. But Sunday, it's going to be 60 degrees. The only problem is we're supposed to get a lot of rain.
Oh.
So it's a turf field, so you don't worry about the field getting sloppy. But, they might have issues with passing the ball and catching the ball. But it's going to be warm, 60 degrees.
60 degrees, so it should be pretty good. A lot of offense then, right? Right, Sal?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't get, really, really heavy downpours. I don't know the extent of how heavy the rain's going to get, but I think both of these teams move the ball through the air. Neither one of them have a running game. So I expect to see a lot of passing.
So let's start then with Matthew Stafford, who had the broken or dislocated finger. I think it was actually his middle finger. Yeah,
I'm holding mine up now to show you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah,
no problem.
So do you downgrade him at all? Do you think he can play through it? It sounds like all indications he says he's fine. He's going to be fine. They're going to go through the playbook. It's been reported that he told Jim Bob Cooter that he should don't change the game plan at all for him. He'll figure it out. So what are you thinking about Matthew Stafford against this New York defense that's been very good lately?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this defense is getting after people. The Giants defense took a couple weeks to get going. All that money they spent on these big price free agents, but it's paying off big time right now. And specifically in the secondary, they have one of the best secondaries in the league right now. So I have him down at QB 12, which how big of a Stafford guy I am. I've been high on him. He's always in my top 10. So I have him down a little bit. I don't know that it affects him a lot or as much as just the Giants defense will. I think they'll probably go to more short passing to try and avoid, guys in getting deep and getting interceptions. So maybe if Riddick plays, it's a big Riddick game. Maybe Ebron and some short passing to guys like Tate and Bolden. So we'll have to see. I don't think they have any other choice but to pass the ball because that's just what their offense does.
Yeah, Steve has Golden Tate up at 12.
Woo,
12.
Steve. Woo, Steve.
He's going all in on Golden Tate. You and I both have him as a low end RB or low end wide receiver 2. You have him at 24. I have him at 21. So we both think he's going to have a good game. Marvin Jones was relevant again last week for a little bit. I'm sure no one played him, rightfully so. Are you willing to take a shot this week on him?
No, I'm not playing Marvin Jones in a week like this. Most of his production came on one really long, deep pass that he got
kind of awkward anyway.
Yeah, he made an interesting looking catch on it. So I don't know. Does he even check in our top 50? Kev?
I don't think so. No,
I don't see him in our top 50. So yeah, I wouldn't be playing him this week.
All right. So as we talked about, Riddick injured. He's got that wrist injury. Missed the game. He was rise scratched last week. Looks like he hasn't practiced again yet this week. So definitely keep your eyes on whether or not he practices on Friday because that's going to be a big teller as to whether or not he's going to be in this game. But if not, Dwayne Washington will be the guy if you're in a really, 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 really deep league. You may want to roll him out here because Zenner's banged up again, and they don't have anyone else. But they're just not going to run the ball, like you said. So on the New York side of the ball, we have Eli outside of our top 12. He comes in at 12 for me, 16 for Steve. Actually, you do have him at 11, so he's in there for you. You just think it's a volume play, or because Detroit's defense has been pretty good.
They've actually improved a lot against the pass. If you remember, early part of the season, first 5-6 weeks, they were consistently one of the one or two worst pass defenses in fantasy football. So they're middle of the pack now, which means over the last few weeks they've really upped their game a lot, and that's been evident in the lower scoring games that they're playing in.
Number one in the last 5 weeks against QBs.
Yeah, well, there you go. So to me, it's a matter of the Giants can't run the ball. Same situation with Detroit. They have to pass it. Odell Beckham Jr. is being force-fed the ball, and at any play he could take it to the house. So he's a QB1 for me this week because I just think, again, a volume play.
Yeah, so Sterling Shepard, is he on your radar this week, or is it still too risky for him?
Yeah, I don't think I have him. Do I have him as a wide receiver 2?
3.
Yeah, I have him wide receiver 3. So if I'm in a 3 wide receiver league, I get him in there. If I got to make a tough choice at flex at 33, that means he's a lower end flex for me. So I might have a running back I want to slip in there ahead of him. So again, roster construction. You'll look at these rankings if you want and just compare them to other guys who you have to choose from. And at best, I'd have him in there as a flex.
I can't imagine you're depending on Rashad Jennings or Paul Perkins or even Shane Vereen if you're this far.
Or Bobby Rainey or Dave Meggett.
Did you say Dave Meggett?
What?
All right. So we will move on then. Indianapolis Colts will travel to Minnesota to play the Vikings. It's indoors, so I don't think we have to worry about the weather so much, which is good because I hear Minnesota's pretty cold.
How is it, Scott? You tell us. Reach out to us.
Scott, let us know how it is in Minnesota. So let's start with Minnesota. The Vikings, not a lot from again, more teams that can't run the ball, right? Minnesota has been terrible against, for running the ball. So it's a heavy volume passing offense. And yet, I don't think you can trust any of these wide receivers either. I mean, Stephon Diggs, you got to roll out there, but geez.
A heavy volume offense that's not good at passing the ball.
Yeah.
So I have Diggs lowest out of all of us, but I do have him at 22, which means he's a wide receiver 2 for me. You're at 20, Steve's at 17. So we all have him as a wide receiver 2 because he probably gets a lot of targets and a lot of receptions. I don't know that he gets a big play, and hopefully he can get a touchdown to carry you to victory. I think that the best play out of anybody on the team is Kyle Rudolph this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, where do we have Rudolph? I have him at 5. You guys have, Steve has him at 9. You have him at 8. So he's definitely in our top, he's a tight end 1 for us. I think it's a great matchup, so I have him a little higher. And I think he's going to get a touchdown. They're going to score, and no one else on that team scores. I think they have a rule against it. Anyone else getting touchdowns?
Rudolph and nobody else.
Yeah, that's it. It's Rudolph or no one else. Especially the closer you get to Christmas, it's just,
You killed me for that Rudolph joke. It's 2 weeks in a row. You've gone to 2 weeks in a row now.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. All right, but the Minnesota defense is no joke. They've been solid pretty much all year, with I think the exception of a couple weeks where they really got exposed for a couple of things, and I think they've done a good job of correcting it. Indianapolis is typically a very good offense, but with no offensive line really to speak of. Andrew Luck's been getting killed. What do you think for him in this game, though? I mean, tough defense. His wide receivers are all banged up. We don't think Moncrief's going to play. T.Y. Hilton showed up missing practice again. Philip Dorsett has been non-existent.
And he's on the injury report today.
And he's on the injury report too. Yeah. So I mean, what are you doing with Andrew Luck here?
So I have him at 10, like you do. The lowest I've had him ranked.
Yep.
At all this season. Andrew Luck was my guy coming in. I say he would be the number 1 guy, number 1 QB. And so I'm going to probably start him. in a lot of leagues, my quarterbacks were Andrew Luck, Matthew Stafford, and Eli Manning. And this week I have them ranked 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Yeah.
So I would, if I was still in some leagues, which I'm not pretty much any of them, I'd have a tough decision this week because I don't like a whole lot of the matchups that are going on. But you're going to roll them out there. Like we said earlier, you're going to play them, in my opinion, you're going to play them over guys like Winston and Rivers and Mariota and Taylor and, Prescott, guys like that, because he's Andrew Luck. And at any time, he could snap off a 350, 400-yard, 3-touchdown game against any defense in this league. He's one of those guys. He's one of those few guys that could go in against any defense on the road, wherever, and put up an absolutely ridiculous game. So, you're going to play him if you have him because this is the reason you drafted a guy like that.
Yeah, and there's something about when you get to this point in the fantasy season, you kind of have to start these guys. I got asked a couple of questions today about Brady, right? Obviously going against the Denver defense, we'll get to that game in a little bit, but it's not a great matchup. But I just, you will hate yourself so much for not playing the guy that got you there if he blows up. And for me, that actually makes some of the decisions for me. If it's close, I'm going with the guy that got me there because I don't want to have him have a huge game on my bench. It'll hurt too much.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Tom Brady when we get to that game because I know that you moved him up in your rankings.
I did.
Your original rankings, I was like, if I showed this to the people in New England,
but
Kevin, it might get rejected.
That's right. Let's keep moving while we are here. Pittsburgh will take on Cincinnati Sunday, last of the 1 o'clock games. So, Cincinnati is a team that's hurt. Very hurt. They're pretty much out of. I think they are statistically eliminated from the playoffs at this point. Not a lot to play for. AJ Green returned to practice, but it doesn't. I don't know. I'd be shocked if he played this week. You have a battered running back crew with Jeremy Hill still there. I think Jeremy Hill's a decent play because the Steelers haven't been great against the run. They've been better against the pass, which is interesting. And not to mention, Jeremy Hill's going to get a lot of volume in this because there's no one else. So I think he's a good play. You might consider.
I don't think it's right that you keep disrespecting Rex Burkhead like this.
Yeah, I apologize to the Burkhead family, but that's how I feel.
They should apologize for a name like Burkhead.
But I think Hill and Eifert really it on the Cincinnati side of the ball for me, right? I mean, maybe Dalton if you're in a deep league. I
can't argue with that. It would have to be a deep league for Dalton. I have him down around 18 or 19, somewhere down that way. But, yeah, for me, I have Eifert as my tight end 1 this week. He's just been each week coming out and putting up touchdowns, 2 touchdowns last week. I think that he doesn't look for anybody but Eifert when he gets to the red zone or the end zone. So I think you could almost be like he was last year. Like I had 13 touchdowns last year. It's almost averaging 1 a game. So Eifert's up there and Hill because of volume, and he's looked pretty good lately. I have him at 10, and you have him at 12. Steve at 7. So he's an RB1 for us across the board, and he's been getting worked into the past game as well, and he's shown that he can handle that. So, yeah, that's about it. Like you said, I don't trust Boyd or drops this week.
No, definitely not. And I think if AJ Green plays, let's say for example he plays, what are you doing there? Are you starting him or are you holding? Not that you have him on your roster, or are you still active? But
the 2 places that I have him, I am I'm no longer in those leagues, and so here's what I would have to say: that if I made it to week 15, I obviously had somebody that could take his place, and I got here using someone else. So if the person I've been using in his place has a good matchup and has been steady, I probably stay there because I can't trust that he comes on the field and makes it out of the first quarter or plays a lot, or they don't get down or up in this game, likely down, and they say, all right, it's not worth it, let's take him out.
What if you replaced him with a guy like, like Taylor Gabriel? We'll get to the Atlanta game in a little bit, but he's a guy I think Gabriel. You play Gabriel, definitely?
This week I would play Gabriel, yeah.
Right.
The matchup is great over there. Like you said, we'll talk about that game. So, yeah, that's an easy decision for me, actually.
Okay. All right, let's the Pittsburgh side of the ball. I think it's pretty easy. You're starting your studs, right? You're starting Lev Bell, you're starting Antonio Brown, you're probably starting Ladarius Green. Although I think
it's nice that they have studs at every position.
Yeah, I think you guys are a little lower on Green than I am.
I think that's a bit of a hate play for me this week.
It's just an anger play. Yeah,
A little angry.
It happens. Angry. You were at 16 with him. Steve and I both think he's a tight end 1. What about Ben Roethlisberger? Because I was high on him this week. I think a lot of people are down on him. I have him at 5. You have him at 7. So you're in that category with me. Steve's a little lower at 11, but convince people to come back around to Ben.
You brought up the road split yourself the other day.
Yep.
And rode it home. And this is in Cincinnati, correct?
Correct.
So, did you have him higher in your rankings? Did you move him down?
I had him all the way up to 2, and I dropped him back a couple of spots. Correct.
Yeah, I thought you had him a little bit higher. So I was actually a little surprised when I saw that because you brought up the road splits. And hey, listen, this is Roethlisberger. Road splits are nothing. They're fighting for the division. And they throw the ball, and they throw the ball even to the running back. And Le'Veon Bell can take a short pass to the house from anywhere. So, again, this is a top 5 to top 8 quarterback on a weekly basis. You're in week 15 of the fantasy championship. You need to get a win. You play your studs, and Ben's a stud. I mean, I don't particularly care for him as a human being, but as a fantasy football player, he's a stud. So, I have him at 7. I'm rolling him out there.
Yeah, Cincinnati 10th worst against the quarterback this season, so decent matchup. And I think, like you said, it's a division game, road or not. He's going to come out slinging it. So, all right, New Orleans. The Saints will travel to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. The Cardinals look like a beaten team to me. Sal, obviously, Michael Floyd gets cut this week. Picked up by the Patriots today. So, there's that for fantasy news, if you want to call it fantasy news. I don't know how many people were dependent on Michael Floyd at this point, but the rest of the Arizona offense is really David Johnson at this point, right?
That's it. It doesn't exist. And I'll say something here. In the coming weeks as the season ends and we move on from having to talk about games on a weekly basis, we're going to go back and we're going to talk about our biggest hits and our biggest misses on the season. And I'll just say flat out right now, I can't say there's any bigger miss for me than Michael Floyd. I said that Michael Floyd would be in the wide receiver 1 topic when the season ended, and he wasn't even in the wide receiver 1 topic on his own team, wide receiver 3 topic on his own team, and then he decided to go have a drinky poo, not off behind the wheel, and now he's in New England somehow that he got rewarded. He might win a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, he could get a ring for that. So that's nice. Look, we talked about it. I think I don't know if we talked about it on the air or if it was just something we talked about. I thought this was a guy that would be a prime buy low candidate for the Patriots because that's what they do, right? They scoop a guy with talent and at his lowest point and try to make him into something. So hopefully that'll happen. But as it regards to Arizona in this game, I think you're starting David Johnson. I don't think you're trusting Carson Palmer. I don't think you're trusting that J.J. Nelson will have the same output that he had last week. That was the supreme efficiency game where he got 2 touches and 2 touchdowns. So I don't think you can trust that, although there is an uptick for him with Floyd being out, I think. Larry Fitzgerald, he's going to be what he is, right? I mean, I think he's kind of like the Frank Gore of wide receivers. He's the ultimate wide receiver too. He's going to get a lot of catches. He'll get a decent amount of yards. Probably won't score, but if he does, then you're going to have a good day.
I think he has a good day this week. I have him as the number 5 wide receiver this week.
Wow.
I think they're going to go to him a ton. I just think it's him and David Johnson.
Definitely.
Somebody said the other day, I think they had maybe asked about Nelson. What you think Nelson's a good play? And somebody said, well, with Floyd not there, they have to throw the ball to somebody. And my response was, were they throwing the ball to Floyd?
Yeah, right.
Did I miss something? Was he actually involved in that game plan?
Occasionally, very rarely. But it is a good matchup against New Orleans. On the other side of the ball, the Saints have, we talked about Mark Ingram's got a toe issue, so keep your eyes peeled for him. He did return to practice, but it was limited, so he could be on a pitch count of some sort if he does have some injuries he's dealing with. Drew Brees has gone 9 quarters without a touchdown. Sal, do you think it continues?
Boy, it's weird because do we say, I don't expect him to have 3 bad games in a row after we said we don't expect him to have 2 bad games in a row? Is it possible this guy hit the wall? I mean, he played well all season. I mean, maybe there was one stinker earlier in the year, but he has looked bad. He's got like eight interceptions over the last couple of weeks. He doesn't make smart decisions, and he's not a gunslinger to the sense of what Brett Favre used to be, but he is a guy who will throw into coverage and usually thread the needle. But I don't know. I have him up there as a QB1, but lower. Those guys are all lower for me. My guys that are always top 5 to 8 guys are all 10, 11, 12 this week. Breeze, Stafford, and Luck. Those are my guys, and I'm not high on them this week. So I would not be confident if I was a Drew Brees owner this week.
Yeah, it's tough to be confident when a guy throws, I think, like you said, 6 interceptions and no touchdowns in the last 9 quarters. So definitely good, definitely not good. But I do think he does rebound in this one a little bit. I think that he'll throw a couple of touchdown passes here. If you watched the game last week, he did throw a couple of touchdowns. One was called back and one was dropped. So, I think that better days are ahead for Drew Brees, and I think you can start those guys. I want to ask you, though, about the wide receivers. Michael Thomas has been banged up, but it looks like he's going to return in this one. Brandon Cooks has been up and down all season, as he typically is, and Willie Snead's been actually fairly consistent. But with Michael Thomas, if he plays in this one, I think he's the guy covered by Patrick Peterson. So are you staying away from him?
Yeah, I have him. I have Cooks higher this week myself. I have Cooks up at 10, actually. I have him higher out of anybody. I just think he's going to get free for a deep touchdown.
I hope so.
I don't know that I'm going to stay away from Michael Thomas as far as not start him at all. I'm pretty sure I have him as a wide receiver 2. So yeah, I have him
16 actually. Yeah, so you're 16, high on both of them.
So let's see what happens. You said before, maybe Arizona's in the same territory as the Jets, but they've kind of given up a little bit. I don't know that Arians is the type of coach that Bowles is, even though Bowles came from that system 2 years ago. I don't know that Arians is the type of guy that will allow that to happen. He's much more fiery, so we'll have to see. I think that this will be an interesting game. The Cardinals a few weeks ago was a team to me that was super dangerous because they were a playoff team that wasn't going to be in the playoffs, and they were playing like it, especially on defense. So they kind of fudged me over last week with what they did against Miami. I thought they put up a better game against Miami, and when they didn't, it said to me, all right, we're in postseason mode.
All right, so we have to move because this is the longest podcast in the history of the Falafel House. San Francisco 49ers will travel to Atlanta to take on the Falcons at 4:05. Obviously, Atlanta comes in as the vaunted offense. San Francisco comes in.
Fire up your Falcons, everybody!
Fire up the Falcons, indeed. I love both running backs. You know that I had Tevin Coleman ranked 8th.
Oh, yes. Yeah, two top 10 running backs. Yes.
I had 2 top 10 running backs for Atlanta, and then I came to my senses and sort of brought that back a little bit. I sort of reeled it in, but I think it's possible. I really do think it's possible.
Well, they've done it already this season, and when Coleman was healthy at the beginning of the year, they were both top 10 running backs in the NFL. They on a weekly basis, they were top 10 running backs because of touchdowns and receptions, and especially in PPR leagues. So it's absolutely possible.
And San Francisco is historically bad against running backs.
Yeah, and they're the worst this year, at least in the bottom 2. So
they have given up almost 300 more yards than the next worst team, which is the Cleveland Browns.
That's crazy.
And 5 touchdowns more.
Yeah, what's the other guy's name? Ward, get him in there too, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how Matt Ryan could run on them.
Maybe they'll give the ball to Hooper, let him run a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. So I think it's honestly possible. The bigger story here is going to be whether or not Julio Jones plays again. Obviously, they sat out last week. Another late game this week, so if it does come down to a game time decision, you're gonna have to make that decision again. I think that was that's the worst for fantasy football when it comes to that because of the late start and all that. So what are you doing, Sal? I mean, you're making other arrangements at this point. If you've made it this far, you made arrangements last week and it worked out. So For you, it didn't.
I was going to say, who the hell did that work out for? Didn't work out for me. So
it could have. It could have,
yeah.
Sal. It
I'm going to take Julio Jones. I'm going to look at him differently than A.J. Green because he didn't have the tear and as bad the injury that A.J. Green had. He hasn't missed weeks where he's coming back. He missed 1 week. And if he comes back, they're going to push him on Fridays with the saying, right? He hasn't practiced.
Yeah, he's going to come out. Yeah.
But he's run on the side, and they're going to see if he can explode off of the foot tomorrow. So that's going to be the telltale sign. Hopefully it's not a game time decision. Hopefully they give you a little bit more of a heads up, and you make that decision. If Julio Jones starts, I'm going to play him because I have a feeling he's going to get worked in pretty well, and he could probably get enough done early to give you a big day and then go have a seat against this bad defense. So
Atlanta's defense has been better lately, but I still think you're probably starting Carlos Hyde. You're probably not starting anyone else, right?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. Atlanta has been better than they were earlier in the season, but who do you trust in here at wide receiver? Their lead tight end is out. Kaepernick has been a little bit erratic lately. So, yeah, I think it's Carlos Hyde and nothing else.
Yep. All right, so let's move on then. New England travels to Denver in what I think is the best game of this schedule. No?
Yeah, it's definitely a good matchup. Even though Denver is when they're 8-5, they're not as dominant as you want a defending Super Bowl team to be. Their defense has played well. And
New England struggles going there. I mean, that's just historically, that's one of the few places that the New England Patriots go to that they really struggle. So definitely should be a good game. What do you think about the New England Patriots offense? Obviously, we talked about it a little bit. The downgrade for Tom Brady. As you mentioned, I had him. I think I had him at 14.
Yeah, he was somewhere in the teens. I was appalled.
Yeah, it was hard to do. I kicked him up to 8, and even that I still think might be a little high, but it's not, because ultimately, as I said earlier, I think you're starting him if you have him. He's your guy. He's gotten you here. I think you're rolling him out there.
Yeah, so this is a question that's been coming in a lot on the Fantasy Life app, and this is my you want to call it a canned response because it's my response, and I've been giving it to anybody who has asked me. First and foremost, he's Tom Brady. Second of all, they're fighting for home field advantage. We know all too well that they did not get home field advantage last year, and it cost them. If they have home field advantage last year, they probably go back to the Super Bowl and possibly win it, but they didn't. So the team that knocked them out, right, is this team. Am I wrong saying that? Did they get knocked out by Denver last year?
That's correct.
All right, so don't you think that they would want to eliminate this team from the playoffs?
I think
right
it would be
now?
nice. As a fan, I would enjoy it.
So they're going to come out with the intention of, all right, if we give Denver if we deal them a loss, it's going to hurt their playoff chances. We don't have to worry about playing a team like this that has a defense that's played against us, that knows our system, that plays well against us. Let's get rid of them now. And in turn, we're fighting against two teams, also in the AFC West, for home field advantage because it's a bounce back between the Chiefs and the Raiders. So I think that the Patriots come out and they go full throttle in this game. And I think we saw at points early in the season, you could definitely move the ball on the ground against the Broncos.
Absolutely.
I think Brady's going to have success this weekend. Maybe this becomes a big Deion Lewis, James White game, and still that becomes points for Brady. So I'm not hesitating. This is Tom Brady.
All right, so what are you doing with those two running backs then? Because you talked about it, that it could be a big game for one of them or both of them, but it seems like they're kind of canceling out each other out right now.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think that they will help the overall numbers and help Brady's numbers, but I don't have either one of them ranked as a RB1 or 2. I have them down in flex territory, and I have Deion Lewis a little bit higher than James White. I know White, I think, out-touched him last week, or definitely had a better production game than him last week, if I'm not wrong.
Yep.
But I think Deion Lewis is the better player of the two, and I think that they would like to get Deion Lewis going, especially heading into the playoffs. I think he's the guy that brings more to the table for them. So I think that it's on a weekly basis, he's the guy that's going to be ranked higher because I just think that they prefer him.
Yeah, they come in back-to-back in our consensus ranking at 41 and 42. They're flip-flopped for Steve. you and I both have Lewis ranked higher. I'm highest on both of those guys, but we're all in the same general area.
Yeah, no, Steve absolutely hates Deion Lewis.
He really does. I think it's personal.
59, Steve.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Tough one there for him. All right, so you're probably not using either of those guys. Julian Edelman, I think, is the guy you're going to use, and I do think he can be successful against this Denver defense. The two guys that are going to be on the outside, Malcolm Mitchell and Chris Hogan, are going to be bottled up by Chris Harris if he plays and Aqib Talib. But I think they're a little more susceptible around the middle of the field, and that's what Edelman does. I think he's going to be exactly what he has been for the last few weeks, right? He's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to get a decent amount of yards, may or may not score.
Yeah, but enjoy this, NFL fans. This should be a good game. Just regular, straight-up good football game.
Anything on the Denver side of the ball we need to be aware of? I mean, you're starting the two wide receivers if you have them, Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, but I don't know that you can trust the running backs at this point. Booker,
you can't trust them.
Forsett, not good enough to start. So, is there anyone else on this team that you're looking at? Simeon?
No, you can't start Simeon. I mean, I'll tell you this: Denver defense has been a good defense this year, and you said it earlier about the Vikings, and I said something about the Chiefs. And this has been my motto the second half of the year. Play those defenses, regardless of who they're playing against, because they make plays. They may give up points, but they're going to get sacks. They're going to get turnovers. They're going to return kicks, and you play good defenses. I don't think that this is a super, super scary matchup. And, I mean, weeks ago with the Chiefs against the Raiders, so many people didn't want to play them. I tried to convince as many people as I could play the Chiefs against the Raiders, and the Chiefs had a phenomenal game that night. So it doesn't scare me to play Denver against them. So for me, it's the two wide receivers, Denver defense, and nothing else.
All right, I'm going to sit back and let you talk and analyze this next game. Oakland Raiders will go to San Diego Chargers to take them on. It's a 4 o'clock game on Sunday. So what do you got on this one, Sal?
I almost wish I prepared a little bit better.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. So San Diego, you lost Melvin Gordon. They're obviously their best playmaker on offense. So I think that this becomes a pass-happy game. I have Kenneth. I probably have Farrell ranked higher than you guys because I just think he does come in and get the bulk of the touches. But from what I did read, I have him ranked the same as Steve, 26th. You have him 32nd. I did read that they're going to split touches, him and Ronnie Hillman. So, I'm probably starting Phillip Rivers in this scenario. This is the time that people traded for him for. Everybody talked about his schedule going into the playoffs, and you probably want to start him against the Raiders. But outside of Tyrell Williams, I don't know you could trust anybody else at wide receiver. Dontrell Inman has been pretty consistent lately, but the Raiders have actually played a little bit better against the pass than they did at the beginning half of the year. So I'm starting my Raiders. Latavius Murray, for me, has jumped up to a RB1 this week. I have him in my top 8. I'm not sure where you guys have.
Yeah,
it's flat out production. I mean, production and touchdowns. Yeah, you have him at 9. You're up there with
9.
me.
I'm with you.
And Steve has him right at 12, which is still, for us in the 12-team plus leagues, he's an RB1. And I'm going to get both wide receivers in there. Chargers are not as bad against the pass as we think. We believe traditionally that they're not that good, but if you look at the stats, they're more middle of the pack than terrible. But the Raiders are in a dogfight now for the division. So I believe they come out with guns blazing and the ball's flying all over the place in this game. So Carr, the two wide receivers, and Latavius Murray are in my lineup, no doubt.
All right, I could not agree with you more on all of that, Sal, which is scary. We are agreeing a lot tonight. I don't like it. I need Steve back soon.
Hurry back!
Let's get to Tampa Bay. Buccaneers playing the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas on Sunday Night Football at 8:30. For me, in this one, this is a great game. I think it's going to be a real tough battle. I actually think that Tampa Bay could pull this one out.
You're buying in, huh?
I'm buying in. I think that their defense is actually for real. I'm not sure. I'm not sold that it's a fluke right now the way they've been playing. I think they've been playing excellent defense, and I think they're going to confuse Dak Prescott a little bit, who's looked a little bit more, come a little bit down to earth a little here, and I think he could struggle in this game again. I do think that they are a little more susceptible to the run. And I think this is going to be a big Ezekiel Elliott game. I think you could see him rush, 30 times potentially in this one.
Yeah, it wouldn't be crazy to see that, right? Because you've nailed it on Prescott, and should that happen, and should Prescott struggle in the first half, we may see Tony. He might be.
I don't think so.
He might rear his
they
head.
Can't do it.
Well, let me ask you. He hasn't had a good game in 3 weeks. All right, he's had both subpar games compared to where he was. They lost to the Giants last week, which keeps the Giants in play. It's a 2-game lead, but the Giants have the tiebreaker with 2 wins. So if they're in danger of losing this game, or if they do lose this game and the Giants win, they now have a 1-game lead with 2 to play, and their division and the home field is on the line. They really might consider it. I've heard that talked a lot.
So here's the thing, though. The thing with bringing in Tony Romo is that's it for the year, right?
Yeah, once you go to Romo, unless he breaks, you're not going back to Prescott.
So, and that's why I think they'll hold off as long as they can. And with the record that they have right now, they currently still in the driver's seat. You'll know whether or not New York has won. I think. I guess you could see it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they know that if they go to Tony Romo, that's it for them for the year. They have to stick with him until he, like you said, he breaks. So, but I do think Dak struggles in this one. So, but I also think that Dez could have a decent game. So go figure.
Yeah, you got to probably play Dez. If you have him, you play him. He's at least a wide receiver 2 this week. But he killed people. If you have him, you probably didn't move on from last week.
No, probably not. So let's talk about Tampa Bay really quickly. Dallas's defense has played pretty well all season. I think it's a mirage. I don't know how they're doing it. I think they may fall apart. Rod Marinelli is one of the best defensive coaches in the league because he gets crappy players to play well somehow. But on the other side of the ball, you're talking about Doug Martin, who's been terrible since he's come back. Do you guys have him at 17? I have him at 25, so I have him outside of RB2 range.
Wow.
You guys are running him out there, huh?
Yeah, I mean, again, he's not a spectacular play, but I think he's better than the guys I have him ahead of. The guys that are behind him, I trust him a little bit more. Immediately behind him, for me, well, I would have to hit my sortable ranks thing, right? And I didn't do that. So, but yeah, I trust him as an RB2. I know that Sims is going to be back, right? And I don't, it's not a great scenario if you have him, but I'm going to play him. I'm going to play him as an RB2.
Yeah, see, I'm just concerned about him. I think it's a tough matchup, and I think he's going to be, he's going to struggle. For me, Mike Evans is the only guy that's a really, slam dunk play on Tampa Bay for this week. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it could be a low-scoring game, but that's about it for me. You might have to roll out Cameron Brate, but even that I think is probably a tougher matchup in general. I actually have him highest, strangely. Wow, you guys are lower on him, huh?
I have him at 11, but so I'm starting him if I have him.
Yeah.
But, I think that Dallas was not as good against the tight end a little bit early. They've defended a little bit better lately, but they're not a great tight end defense. But
all right, so we will. Anything else on that game then?
No.
Let's get to Monday Night Football. Carolina Panthers at the Washington Football Team. This is obviously in Washington on Monday night. Carolina has basically, I don't know if they're mathematically eliminated, but they're eliminated. Cam Newton has been terrible, Sal. Terrible. A lot of people talked about dropping him at this point. What are you?
Yeah.
If you have him, are you rolling him out there? If you're still alive?
Well, there's only one person who's higher on him than me this week, right? I guess that's Steve. Steve has him at 2, but I actually have him at QB3. I'm not that far behind. I think he comes out and has a game here. I think that they don't have a lot to lose. I think they play a little loose in this game, and I think he comes through for you. If you've held on to him all year, I think he's a good play. I don't have any guys. If you drafted him, there's not too many other guys that I have ranked around him that you probably have on your team because you probably waited a lot longer to draft a quarterback, and maybe you got a guy like Mariota, like Gus did, Pick them up off of waivers. But I'm not playing Mariota over Cam this week. This is week 15 of the fantasy playoffs. Roll them out. I think Cam comes through with a 22 point game for you this week.
Wow, you heard it here, 22 points. So does that mean that Kelvin Benjamin is playable?
Kelvin Benjamin I have as a low wide receiver too, maybe even just outside of that. But I think that Ted Ginn is a guy who's become a deep threat on a weekly basis, and Devin Funchess got worked in a little bit last week. So I think the ball gets spread around. Greg Olsen looks like he's back more involved in the pass game after a few weeks of being on the back of milk cartons. So I don't know that any one particular wide receiver has the big game, or that you can guess who has the big game, but I think he spreads it around and gets everybody involved.
Jonathan Stewart, the Redskins have been terrible against the run all season. I think Jonathan Stewart's a pretty good play in this one as well. Where do I have him? I have him ranked 18. You guys have him at 19, or Steve has him at 19. You have him at 14. So he's definitely in the RB2 category for us, but I do think he's a good play. And then let's see the Washington side of the ball, Sal. I love Kirk Cousins this week, and I can't believe I've actually said that. It took 15 weeks for me to say it, but I think he's a great play.
I think you've been at the meetings. We all have him high. You and Steve have him at number 3, and I have him at number 4. Easily the highest he's been ranked in FLAFFL all season. And what can you say? Carolina's got a young secondary, and they've shown it. They've not been good. I thought that coming out of the bye week, I had made a statement when I was on the Basement Sports Report a few weeks back. I thought coming out of the bye week, Carolina was going to run the table. They won the first 2, and they went back to the piece of crap we were watching at the beginning of the year. So, get anybody in that passing game in your lineup. You're going to want to have Jordan Reed in there. You're definitely going to want, even though Jamison Crowder hurt his owners last week after being consistent all year, you're definitely rolling back out there. And I think that Deshaun Jackson had a nice game last week. I think a lot of goodness coming out of here. I even like Rob Kelly, I think, more than most of you guys do this week.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Rob Kelly. I think I have him at 24. You have him at 16. Steve's at 22. So I'm back-end running back too, but I just don't think – I think he's not involved in the passing game at all, and Carolina's been better against the run than they have against the pass. So I just think one of the reasons I love Kirk Cousins so much in this game is I think they're going to throw all game. I could see him.
I could see it.
I could see him throwing the ball 45, 50 times. So, all right, Sal, that does it. This might be the longest podcast in Falafel House history, as I mentioned. But so we thank you for sticking around. And I know you don't usually prepare them, but do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, so just like Steve usually says, you can find us on all social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, the Fantasy Life app, everywhere that Twitter, all at Falafel House, whether it be underscores here or whatever. Type in Falafel House. We're on all of them. Check out our rankings and our start sits. He's way better at that than you. Yeah, that's because he's like the micro machines, man. Remember that guy was FalafelHouse.com is where you can find our rankings and all of our articles, our weekly start sits. We still have waiver articles going up because there's still guys to grab to save your season. Come check it all out. Come check us out. Get your Festivus grievance clips in so we can get them edited and ready to get onto our show in just a few short days. I think we're down to 8 days before we're going to air all the airing of grievances and be prepared for the Falafel House Playoff Challenge that is coming soon. Kevin.
Yeah, so I definitely want to remind everyone about the grievances as you just did. Get them in quickly. falafelhouse@gmail.com is where you can send those. Get them in. Try to get them in by Wednesday of next week. Falafel Festivus is next Friday, as Sal mentioned. So get them in quickly. As we've said, you can get them a little dirty, but try to keep them somewhat clean so Steve doesn't have to do too much editing. And I just want to remind everyone that we love reviews as well. So if you could review us on iTunes, that would be great. And until next time, whoa, how are we going to end? Who hits the button?
I'll hit the button.
Oh.
Hey, come here, button.
Sal, hit the button.
Boom.